Some of the greatest works by famous composers of Baroque music had to be rescued from oblivion and rediscovered, as we've been reminded by the vocal ensemble Cappella Clausura. That's still happening, especially for works composed by women. Even more remarkable is the rediscovery of music and possibilities for performance during the pandemic. That's what happened with a streaming performance of the Magnificat by Donna Chiara Margarita Cozzolani. To tell us how they did it are the ensemble's director, Amelia LeClair, and video editor, Christopher Pitts. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Before we get going, tell us about the composer, Donna Chiara. I made it sound like nobody knew about her during her lifetime, but maybe some of these composers were pretty well known and very accomplished, weren't they?
They actually were well known during their lifetimes because they brought attention to the small towns that their convents were in, and the people who came to the concerts wrote about them, and there were traveling music critics, if you will, who wrote about them a lot. So during their lifetimes, they were well known. The Italians had the great wisdom of building their convents with an outer church, the Chiesa Esteriore, and an inner church. And the inner church was where the nuns lived and sang, and the outer church was where the audience, the congregation, would come and listen. And between those two spaces was a grill, or if you will, a big space in the ceiling through which you could hear the nuns, but you would never see them.
Especially for viewers who are not too familiar with this kind of music, when I say church music or sacred music, they think it's really solemn. But when you listen to this is not that far off from these sort of love-crazed madrigals or even Italian opera.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And in fact, there are lots and lots of little soloistic kind of pieces or duets and trios and things that the nuns wrote also, which to my mind are like mini operas. They have a little bit of recitative, then they have a little tiny aria, and then another little bit of recitative. And the whole piece is sung by one or two people. So it's really not just strictly choral, chanty type of stuff, which was what the church would prescribe, but the nuns continually worked against that.
Christopher Pitts, what about transforming this into streaming video? I mean, this is not like a live performance when you can park a still camera and just keep it in focus. I mean, what did you have to do to make this work?
The thing first was, I mean, it's a lot like going in an audio studio and having to do separate tracks. Everybody tracked their own piece, so we had 18 different pieces. And I have to say, I was pretty amazed at how closely the things really came together. I mean, you have to think about every one of these individuals is just watching Amelia conduct and the Thurabo, the guitar item playing along. That's all they hear. So the fact that they so well phrase these things together, that when we put the 18 pieces together, and it's funny because I would just hold up my iPhone and Amelia would be on the phone watching us, me in the edit suite. I'm right here. In fact, right behind me is where we did all the work. But lining these voices together, I had initially thought could be potentially a disaster. But it turned out to be the opposite. That the professionalism of the vocalists turned out to be very, very concise, and they work together. And probably because they sing a lot together before COVID, that they had a sense of how to blend and how to perform together. So we were very fortunate that we were working with people who performed together and had a familiarity with the genre and the type of music that we're doing. So it was really, really nice to put this together and how nicely it fell together. But we did have to move things. I think there was a case once or twice where we actually had somebody re-record a little segment. And then really what was the real magic, I think, was getting the sound to be audio quality of a recording. And there I have to, James Zahner who's a wizard in audio production. He took all these iPhone audios and really tweaked them so they had a real fullness that you hear when you listen to it.
Amelia, aside from the technical challenges, what did it feel like for people just to be able to do this?
This was early on in the pandemic. I think we did the recording late March, early April, when we were still thinking maybe we can do a May concert. So we weren't as depressed as we all are now. It was hard. It was hard because singers, first of all, they get cues off each other. They hear each other breathing. They look at each other's faces. They stand next to somebody and they can feel what that person is about to do. All of that was missing. And so these singers were singing, first of all, they had to find privacy. Some of them live in apartments. Privacy with no noise, no interruption. That was hard. And then they're singing to a little iPhone, watching me on their computer.
Yeah.
And to get magic out of that is very difficult for a singer, especially an ensemble singer, because we make magic by being together. And the fact that they were all able to do it is really quite remarkable.
Chris, how did you manage that? Because when I look at the finished clip, I'm reminded that this is fairly polyphonic music, which means different people are singing different things at the same time. So how do you get them to synchronize?
I think
Well, that's the tough part, right? I mean, that was, you know, Amelia and I had talked about this beforehand, that why don't we, I mean, this is not music that's a click track, like a pop music thing or something. So you really, it breathes. So there was really, the only way to do that was to give everybody, of course, they had their music, and then to follow Amelia directing, to say, you know, you slow down, stop, pause, and pick it up. So they really responded to her conducting. And that was essentially the click track that we're able to get these people to do that.
I mean, I meant to ask you about that because it's described as you're just beating time to silence, at least the silence around you. But what about inside your head? You're hearing this music?
Yeah. So I basically, I have, you know, the score in front of me. I can hear the music, and I'm timing it. You know, so you just you move with how you want that music to go. It's a piece I'm fairly familiar with, so I wasn't sight reading or anything like that. And I know exactly how I want it to go, and so I make that gesture with my hands. Hopefully they're showing, you know, I'm putting them in a space where the singers can see them, and then they follow. And they're accustomed to following me now because most of them have been with me for a long time.
We should mention people want to see this video and find out more about your performances. And you do some, not just early music, but some new music by women composers as well. So where can people get more details about that?
www.clausura.org, clausura.org.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for taking the time to join us. That was Amelia LeClair and Christopher Pitts from Cappella Clausura.
Thank you so much for having us. A real treat.
Thank you.